Hey you lot. So, little bit of background. I've been going to university for 10 weeks now, studying game development. I've been learning a ton, I've met some lovely new people, and very recently we got given an assignment. We had to create an endless runner video game, similar to the likes of Subway Surfers and Temple Run and other classics we grew up playing. And midway through the development of my project, I had my lecturer take a look at the current progress of my project, and then he said to me, "I expect this to be released on Steam in a few weeks." And in response, I said something along the lines of, okay. No problem. So basically, my lecturer saw so much potential in me and my project that he then expected me to launch the game on Steam. I've never launched a game on Steam before, and it's expensive. Although maybe it's worth trying. So it was settled. Over the next few weeks, I would be making an endless runner game. But not just any endless runner game. No, goodness me, no. The best endless runner game in the classroom. It would not be a horror game. Finally, it would be addictive, and most of all, I would not listen to any of my lecturers yapping on how to actually make an endless runner. Okay? No tutorials from the lecturer. Because I would actually go on to make my own endless runner that was different to what everyone else was making, using what I already knew about making games. At the end of the video, I'll reveal whether or not the game is out on Steam. But before that, this video is sponsored by me. Have you always wanted to make your own PSX outdoor horror games? Well, look no further. PSX House and Forest Pack is here to help. This asset pack will help you create an eerie forest for your retro horror game. But unlike most forest packs, this one is entirely modular, with tree trunks, branches and twigs all as separate pieces for you to build your own trees or even, sus, sculptures. Wow. It's got 4 modular tree trunks, 8 modular branches, 4 modular twigs, a modular wooden platform, a modular wooden plank, and lastly, an entire modular house pack so that you can build your own retro house, furniture not included. The models are in FBX format, the textures are in PNG format. You can use this pack for any purpose, commercial or non-commercial. You don't need to credit me, but it is appreciated. However, you are not allowed to resell or redistribute this pack to anyone else, modified or not. Buy the asset pack down in the description for $1.50 US. You can pay more if you want, and thank you if you do. So the first thing I did was modify Unreal Engine's third-person template, and cut out the player's ability to go left and right or backwards. Then I removed the ability to turn their head, replaced the movement node with an event tick so that the movement function is always called, and bam! We have a character that never stops running. Easy! Then to make the character able to slide, I made a new custom input, and since I didn't have any sliding animations, I made this perfectly normal, totally natural squash and stretch crouching motion. Robot anatomy, am I right? To make them move left and right, this is where I started getting original. See, my lecturer's tutorial told us to do snapping movement, where if you press A and D, you simply snap into the adjacent lane. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to have smooth movement. So the way I programmed the smooth movement was through a timeline. When A or D are pressed, it'll play and reverse the timeline respectively. And the position of the timeline marker determines the relative position of the character mesh. Boom, the controls are complete. But the next step was to make the obstacles, tile generation, and a means for the player to earn points. Temple Run has all these things after all. Thankfully, my lecturer was nice enough to provide us with some assets, and through some simple procedural generation that I made, I had tiles generating. and obstacles randomly distributed on each. And this was great, except for the fact that the player could phase through obstacles and the tiles behind the player weren't despawning, which could make my computer explode. Now, to solve the latter, what I did was either very smart or very dumb. You tell me. For each tile and each obstacle, I put a box collision a short distance away from them that if the player overlaps, it destroys the respective object. Now, this sounds fine, but it does ultimately mean that there are all these boxes in the level just kind of in a spaghetti mess.
Get some help.
I probably should have made it so that there was just one singular box constantly behind the player that destroyed any overlapping objects, but it's too late for that now. The same way I made the obstacles spawn, I had coins spawn, with each one giving the player 1 point. So I had a goal for the player, but now it was time to address the elephant in the room. This was another instance where I threw my wonderful lecturer's tutorials right out the window as I wanted to have a health system. See, the way the lecturer wanted us to do it was to have an AI that chases the player who gets closer if they trip on an obstacle. AI schmai is what I said. What I wanted to do, and ended up doing, was to have a life system. The player would start with 3 hearts, and hitting an obstacle would remove 1. However, coins would have a 2% chance of spawning as collectible hearts that the player could pick up to regain a life. I did this because I had never really seen something like this in an Endless Runner, and I thought it would help the game feel, I don't know, more balanced and fair. You know, having second chances and all that. So I got this heart icon from Pixabay and made them appear on the UI to display the player's health. And I got this 3D heart from the new Fab Marketplace to be the collectible heart. And speaking of health, I needed to add another threat to the game. We were asked to also add cars to our game. I would do the same, but I would put a little twist on them. See, we were meant to do it so that the cars would spawn at the end and immediately start driving down the road towards the player. That's a bit lame, is what I said. What I did was I had each obstacle have a 1 in 10 chance of being replaced by a car. And the way the cars work is that they have a trigger box in front of them. The player overlaps the box, the cars start advancing towards them. Are you sure you're allowed to be doing your own thing? I mean, your literal teachers have told you how to be doing things, and they are the experts. But why aren't you listening to their tutorials? Won't this impact your grade? Now, I hear your concerns, but see, my lecturer did say that to achieve top marks, we do need to go above and beyond. And I like to think that my own methods are basically doing that. I think. Now, I was going to fix the cars as they weren't quite so functional. However, Monday was approaching, which was the deadline for this section of the Endless Runner. So it would soon be time for me to show off my progress to my lecturer. Oh boy, I guess this'll have to do. What will he think? It's nice. Really? Yay, you've made a really good project. Yay, I did it. But you might want to add buildings. Okay, so good news. My lecturer liked what was currently of the Endless Runner, but the journey was far from over. I had just survived 1 week of development. This project was due weeks from that point, and more tutorials had been put up. Time to roll up my sleeves, I guess. So the lecturer's main point was that it simply didn't feel very aesthetic, and so I should add buildings on the sides. This was supposed to be the easy part. I went and I got this collection of city buildings from Fab, and I thought they would be fitting. Not only were they all one static mesh, but they were also way too thick. So I had to test my patience a bit. What I had to do was A, separate the buildings into separate meshes inside of Blender, and then B, resize the now separated buildings to a correct proportion. Phew. Done. Just tedious. Making them spawn procedurally should be easy. Yeah, so turns out this was much harder than I thought. I needed the buildings to be on the sides of the pavements off the road, and I also wanted there to be no gaps between them. This took so much trial and error, and I ended up resorting to what might be a pretty rubbish solution. What I ended up doing was having each building sorted in an array, and for each building was a relative location variable that would dictate where in the X direction the building would spawn, so that it didn't appear overlapping with the road. And then for that same chosen building was another variable dictating the world location for the next building to spawn at. So many variables. That's why I don't like it. But you know what? I got it to work, and that's okay. Now it feels like a crowded city. But I had some spare time on my hands, and I knew that there was more potential to impress my lecturer for next Monday. I added power-ups to the game. Yes, it was perfect. Power-ups weren't even a concept in the tutorials. This was definitely going above and beyond. There are a total of 5 power-ups I added to the game. 3 of them were food items, and essentially their function was that they multiplied the amount of points you get from coins by a certain amount. The grapes doubled your points, the apple tripled, and the cookie quadrupled. Nice. Then I added an invincibility star, which basically does what it sounds like it does. And then I added the power pellet. I'm going full Pac-Man here. This power-up allows you to destroy obstacles for points, and it turned out to be way more fun than I thought. Now, I didn't want to make it so that I'd have to consider different power-ups being active at a time. So another thing I did was make it so that while the player has an active power-up, that all other power-ups turn into these blue cube things. And what these cubes do is they just add more time to the power-up. Once the power-up runs out, they all turn back into regular power-ups again. This proved to be a bit challenging because what I had to do was make it so that picking up any power-up turned all power-ups in the scene into cubes, and then turn all cubes into power-ups again when the current one ended. However, I also had to make it so that when new tiles generated, that any power-ups spawned in on those tiles also turned into cubes while the player had an active power-up. So I wrote a lot of logic for this. But I got it to work. I'd add more stuff, but it was Monday again, and it was time for my lecturer to see the newfound progress. What did he think? Wow, this is a masterpiece. Really? At least, he said something along the lines of that. In fact, he actually got another lecturer for a different subject to try out the game, and he loved it too. But the journey was far from over. I had another week to finalize this game for submission. What else could I add? Polish. This is something basically every game should do. You'll find that this goes a long way in helping your game stand out and feel juicy. So, the first thing I did was add a sparkling effect to all the coins and hearts so that the player is aware that they're important. I also made coins of different sizes, with each size being worth a certain number of points. This includes an ultra rare red coin worth 100 points, which only has a 0.15% chance of appearing in place of a coin. I made it so that when your power-up runs low, the cooldown bar will start flashing. I encased all power-ups in a transparent cylinder to help them stand out. I added sound effects, music, a music volume slider, and also a system where your high score is permanently saved for you to show off to your friends. For aesthetic purposes, I got these speed panels from Fab and made them have a 50-50 chance of appearing on the sides of each generated tile. That's a lot of changes, but in the end, it helped make the game fun, addictive, and replayable as well. Monday was coming up. What was my lecturer's final thoughts? Nice! I love it! Yay! And just like that, the game was finally finished. Did I publish it on Steam? No. I am not paying $100 to publish a crappy game like this. Endless runners are way too common. I'm not even going to publish this hot mess on itch.io. Crap like this should never see the light of day. But for a uni project, it's okay. I worked really hard on it, I went above and beyond, and my lecturer was proud of me. Now if you'll excuse me, I've been given another project to work on, so I need to work on that now. Before you go, remember to buy my Asapac in the description below. I need sleep now. Bye bye.